live today on another episode of Imagine Fitting In podcast with Billy and Madge. Nice to meet you, Billy and Madge.
Nice to meet you, Greg.
Yeah. Good to be here.
So
Yes.
we were talking off camera about Roger Stoll and Logan Elliott. So I always like to do shout outs right away.
Yeah.
So the universe has connected us. And so I look forward to hearing about your specific offerings and your teamwork of providing those. And I hear you have a book published, and you have a quite unique experience down there in Mississippi. So, Billy, like this podcast is about mentors, and I want to take a little dive into, what was it like growing up around Mississippi Delta, or that made you realize this, place carried a deeper spiritual or cultural weight? And this is where you're born? Am I correct?
I was born in 1960 in a little town in Mississippi, Clarksdale, Mississippi, somewhat in the buckle of the Cotton Belt and buckle of the Bible Belt. And there's a lot of duality and paradox in the Deep South, and often misunderstood by folks not from there. But I'm 66 and grew up in a really somewhat of a Rockwellian town that is transmogrified over time, like many towns in America, particularly small towns tied to agriculture. But it was a great place to grow up. I consider myself somewhat of a typical small town boy, swore I'd never come home. Sometime life grinds on you and home ain't a bad option. Moved out west for about 20 years. Have lived a lot of different lives in a lot of different places and a lot of different vocations. But came back in 2007, and to the particular question, I didn't really understand as much about the Delta until I left and came back. And not everybody has to leave, but I had to. And in coming back, I found many things the same and many things that changed, and many things that were the same I looked at through a different lens. And a lot of the things that hadn't changed and had changed, there was good and bad. And how do you define good and bad? But it's neat to live in an area that you have a familiarity with, that the rest of the world finds fascinating, and that really does embody a lot of paradox that makes life very interesting. And we are rife with characters, which I always say, kind of our bat crap crazy lends to good creative media.
Well, that last line, I'd like to document that, because that was a wonderful line. well said. And I can't agree with you more. And I'd say that's similar to my experiences here in Dayton, Ohio. Now, the Delta, as we hear it, as we say, not necessarily familiar exactly with the details of the environment and the history and the culture and what goes on exactly in terms of people's misconceptions. But the Delta is often described through blues and hardship. But what do outsiders still fail to understand? I mean, about the soul of the region, would you say?
Well, I think there's so many misconceptions about the Delta, and it's painted with a broad brush. And, we've got our conundrums, always have. Any place has got its conundrums, and everybody's got a monkey on their back in one way or other. But we are a hot mess in many ways, but we're a felicitous people. And I think a phrase that really sums up much of where we live is a perfect stranger who's never met you or your relatives will walk up and say, "How's your mom and them doing?" and really mean it. And whether black, white, young, old, we really break a lot more bread. And thankfully, we have to have iron sharpen iron. So we get along better than most of the world does, even though they don't see it, because they are looking at a narrative without understanding it. And I think it's inherent in most of us to have presuppositions about people and places, but it's best if we set it aside and try to understand it organically from the inside if possible.
Oh, again, you should be definitely, I hope that's in your book because that's very prophetic and well said. Now I'm going to jump in here. Madge, tell me about how do you meet this character? How long has it been? And has it been quite the ride? I think you got a hot one here.
All right, well, let me just say one thing first, and then I'm going to let her answer it, because when I moved back, Greg, I moved back from out west. I'd had a wife and 4 children and moved back pretty beaten and broken down, and was teaching school during the day and bartending at a newly owned restaurant at night. And so she walks in, and I knew of her. Our parents were contemporaries, but she grew up in the next county, and we were a couple years apart age-wise. So, you don't hang out with people from a different county or different age group. But I always loved the alliteration of her maiden name, Madge Marley. So I moved back. She walks in the bar. We had never met. And I just said, "Hey, Madge." And she's like, "Hey." And then later she asked, somebody said, "Well, who is that?" And it's like, "Oh, that's Billy Howell. You don't want to go out with him. He's a school teacher and has 4 children." I passed the baton now. I'm the dog that walked up to the right house.
Oh,
Well, I don't know about that, but that is true. The first time I met him, he took me aback because he was not only attractive to me to look at, but he was gracious and called me by name. And when someone calls you by your name, it's pretty neat. And then I was newly divorced, and we had both kind of had the similar background as far as not living in the Delta for a while. I had lived lots of places, abroad as well, and had come back home. And yeah, it was so. Our paths crossed, and we immediately started communicating. And that was back early Facebook Messenger, I think, and that was kind of a new thing back then, 2008, 2009, something like that. And we really connected through words at first. Really, I was intrigued by the way he thought and how he wrote, and then we got together, and just there was a chemistry there that was undeniable, and I just found him fascinating to talk to and to be around. So
yeah.
That's how we got together.
I can tell that his book is going to be quite special because the power of the written word and the spoken word. And this is where I've come to understand. And as I mentioned off camera, I probably lived as many places around the country, similar, coming back, and how Roger, Billy mentioned before about coming back, and you we're coming back, and it's interesting how that reflection, and now I'm really understanding I'm actually more of a writer, and so congratulations on your book, Billy. Is this your first book?
It is, and it just organically came about. We had no intention of doing anything with it. I started writing these aphorisms just out of the blue in 2015. And we ended up having over 2,700 of them. I wrote 77 poems. Madge did the illustrations. We've got a devotional companion. So it is absolutely genreless. And as a poet and writer yourself and songwriter, if you don't fit in a genre, it's difficult to market, but that's okay too because it's authentic.
Yeah. That is, man, I want to have a coffee later. We're going to talk more. You have, I can see, Madge, why you grabbed a hold of him. You're super engaging, Billy, and thank you. And I think when you are super authentic, and this is kind of one of the purposes, I believe I'm the best kind of tone I'm setting, is authenticity, and it crosses all genres, all cultures, all divisions that we through mistakenly divide unknowingly or knowingly for whatever reason. So, it's the story, it's the story, it's the rituals that we play every day in our lives that, we're not looking to go back to prehistoric times, but we have to really realize what humanity means.
Well,
And
I mean, you can almost look back, not to get too deep because I'm not, but the whole Platonic and Aristotelian and classic thing was just to love the true, the good, the beautiful. And whether people know that's what they're looking for, they are, but they're getting there through trying to find things that are authentic. And so much of our world now is so hyper connected and Disney-esque and and people are craving something just that's authentic to where people are being real, but we're so overstimulated with non-reality that it's hard to even find out if we're being authentic anymore.
That's again well said. So well said.
And
so
I think a lot of that, if I can interject,
please.
I for some reason it's instilled in me, and my father helped do this, is living in the present. I mean, what's important is what's happening with us right this moment. And that's really all that matters right now. And that's
Exactly.
where reality is. That's where God is. That's what's important, is us relating with each other, even though we're remote, and doing what's pleasing to our Creator. And I feel so often when people get frustrated about not having an authentic world, or they don't know what is their purpose of being here, they're either living in the future or they're living in the past.
Yeah.
And it's all about right now. That's my 2 cents.
And that's where Madge has really helped me, is when I went into recovery, I thought it was just for depression, and I did have substance abuse issues and alcohol issues, but there was a lot more deep-seated trauma there. But, and finally I figured out, okay, I've somewhat been depressed my whole life, and in a different life, I worked in a developmental disability field, working with adults with disabilities, and I taught special ed for years. But it took me that long to figure out that I've always kind of dealt with depression. But going into recovery, like Madge said, looking at the past and the future, I finally figured out with help that the depression was me not just glancing back at the past, but living in it, which is no longer real, or living in the future, which is anxiety, worrying about things that may not happen. It's like my grandmother was very erudite. She had a saying. She said, I would rather it get me. I would rather it get me than worry about it get me, whatever it is. And that's where I lived. And Madge has modeled for me how to live in the present. And even with a theology degree, I'm always like, well, we got to look to the future. But I never lived in the present enough to even know where I was. So that's a bunch of mouthful, but she nailed it right there.
Listen, every one of you guys both just so eloquently gave a statement that, thank you so much, that they were beautiful, in that the universe has brought you together. We're here. There's a reason why we're together here today. Yeah. This is meant to be. And energies collide, they say. Yep. And you're absolutely correct in the fact that so many people, even though they're like, oh yeah, now, and they're like pressure, and that's not helping me, just thinking, now I got to go to work. I got to go do this. I got to go do that. I've been through this and I'm suffering that. And, they're holding on and carrying so much of those woulda, shouldas, and already in their head about those expectations of what's not going to be available for them, as opposed to seeing really what's in front of them right at this moment. I'm sure, Billy, in the tours you do, and you're gonna have to tell us more about that specifically. I'm sure me just sitting here in my studio, seeing your beautiful background and hearing your birds in nature, just before we were a little early on starting, and you guys caught me early, and I'm like, I got to go outside, put my face in the sunshine, and hear my birds chirping, and to come back and say, this is what it's about, right? I'm in my studio, and I'm kind of what I mentioned to you. I'm holding my brand and trying to deliver. As you mentioned, Billy, there's so much coming at us, and that's why I left advertising, is because there's just everything is being now hyperbolic shot at you. Right. And there's just hardly, you can't even, we're having a hard time imagining, imagine fitting in. One of my big lines when I write stuff, my own philosophical statements, is imagine more. And, imagine, and it's funny, I will state this because I use this as my brand, the IMGN, and imagine the artist. That is my music. Imagine the artist. Greg Allen Jankowski. But you have to, and it's been through all my journey, similar to yours, Billy. And Madge, I'm sure you've done some had amazing experiences and read various content, because I can tell you're very bringing something on a level that is almost like a iridescence that saw the sun in Billy that was there. But sometimes
he was hiding the darkness.
Well, yeah. And so, that's a beautiful thing when they can come together like that. Now, so was there any particular mentors that you guys experienced in your lives that really led to this awareness, or has it been a slow processing discovery? Do you is there any early mentors that you remember, Billy, that really, you mentioned your grandmother and some various other people. Was there any person that when maybe you were in your teen years that came across you and that really made an impact in your life?
Definitely. And, I think, the apprenticeship, I read a lot of history, and, and the apprenticeship model has gone out for numerous reasons. But I think when you looked at medieval times all the way up until the modern time, when we're worried about using somebody's labor incorrectly, which is good to look at, but the apprenticeship program where somebody actually sat under a mentor and learned how to do something well. And I can't say I had a particular mentor, but watching my grandmother and father and mother using their individual gifts had an impact on me. And I had a couple of teachers in high school that made a real difference. One that made a huge difference on me was a guy named Larry Lovelady, and he was a theater major who moved. And we actually, one summer when he moved, we were scooping ice cream in an ice cream parlor. When I was 15, I always worked. It just, as a Southern boy, you just always worked. But he was one of the first guys that actually just really tried to understand a guy that was living in a status quo, John Wayne somewhat-esque, with the duality of a matriarchal culture at the same time, who didn't necessarily fit in, but always was trying to. I was always somewhat flighty, and I was hypersensitive, but I played football because that's what you were supposed to do. Well, he took an interest in me, and I had a couple of youth pastors that, would take an interest in me, and that made a difference. As far as just a traditional mentor, I never had one, but I am a huge believer in mentorship. And I think it's one of the biggest things that's lost. And I think so often, like my dad's generation, it was just a different generation, that 30s, 40s, 50s generation. And I think modern dads that are very vested in their families, like my son-in-law with his 4 grandsons, they're very active in the day,
Sons,
4 sons are very active in their lives. But I think in general, we're moving so fast that mentorship is a tough thing to pull off. Now, I don't know if I answered that very well.
No, listen, you just put the icing on the cake of the messaging that I'm continuing to make. As I mentioned, my essence, I'm an artist, and my passion has been fitness.
Mhm.
And it's through my own searching that identifying my body and internalizing the now. There's nothing more being in the now when you're under physical demand and have to perform.
Yes.
And, from football to early age, right? You're just kind of, you're present. You have to be very present of mind. And so this is how I channeled what I believe, I still think, self-described, I've had an ADHD all my life. And I've never been medicated for it, but you know what was the solution? What happened was that both are talented, creative mentors, both physical and intellectual and poetic, and writers. And my father was a writer, God bless him. It was something that was ingrained in me, and he saw that, and that's a beautiful thing. But getting back to mentors, the reason why I'm sitting here today, and I'm a physiotherapist, and I'm in high demand, because I'm addressing issues that is not in the system. I treat the overall person, not the symptom of a bad shoulder. I'm addressing the big picture of why do you have a bad shoulder? Well, spines wear out, right? We have wear and tear. Shoulders wear out, wear and tear. But that refinement of people's awareness of where their body, how they're standing, is their postural alignment the best they can be in their certain circumstance. You can be overweight and look like you're out of shape, and you can carry yourself like a former elite athlete, and you can last a lot longer than a person that is stumbling and struggling and bent over and giving up, and they've been kind of morphed into a position. So I use that as an analogy in terms of morphed in for the mental health. My big emphasis, and I'm going to be starting some new episodes, addition to my along with my IMAGiNE brand called One, and it's called Warriors of Now. And my co-host is a mental performance coach. So we're concerned about the 98% of kids that are going after professional athletic careers that are not going to make it.
Right.
We need to have the character, the building blocks, the skills through mentorship along the way for them to become productive citizens, and hopefully the message is to become mentors themselves. So
and if I'm sorry,
yeah,
no, go ahead.
Please.
And that's one of my frustrations. I kayak. That's my new addiction over the last, close to 8 years. But it keeps me healthy. We eat right. We don't do seed oils. I mean, we do a lot of things right. But the only TV we really watch is BritBox. We like British dramas, but I enjoy college football in the fall. But now my biggest frustration with college football is it's almost impossible to mentor a young man now with the portal and how they can move back and forth the university. Some of them will be in 5 or 6 universities over a college career. How can a coach that gives a damn about that boy mentor him when it's just hopping from one thing to another? So even in something, a lot of these football players, and it's anywhere, but maybe the only role model they'll ever have that is a male role model may be a coach. And now they get him for one semester. So
And the
anyway,
emphasis is on money.
right. And it's
Right.
not on raising young men to be an integral part and contributor to society.
Right.
My dad was, if I can interject, my dad was
please.
He was my mentor.
Mm.
And I've written an article about this on the Delta Bohemian, our blog, called The Truths of Bolden Marley, and that was my dad's name. And they're ingrained in me. So even though I don't remember every instance that it came up in our lives, it was ingrained in me. It's how I live my life. And I do credit him for instilling those truths in me. And they're very basic. It's be patient. No matter what came up, any argument, if I got in trouble, whatever, that was always interjected. Be patient, man. Be patient. Seek the truth. Seek the truth. We'd be discussing something. He'd say, well, seek the truth, Madge. Let's seek the truth. Live in the present. We've already talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Question extremes. Question any extreme, whether it's really great or not great. Question anything taken to an extreme. Keep yourself on an even keel. You may get off course every now and then, but what's most important is loving God and loving others. How we treat others and how we relate to our Creator. That's what he instilled in me.
And your other one you forgot is life isn't fair.
Oh, that's right. Life isn't fair. It isn't. He said it over and over again. Madge, life's not fair.
I was raised Roman Catholic, so in the Christian faith. And I consider myself a spiritual creative being. And as you mentioned, if I look through my lens of my eyes and I see the sorrows, which that is to be expected. The painting behind me there's actually a cross, which underneath you don't see is actually a yin and yang symbol. So my father was raised Roman Catholic. My mother was a devout Roman Catholic, but my father didn't speed off, but he was fascinated by cultures around the world, and he was fascinated by the Taoism and the Eastern philosophy. In that the words that one of the statements they say, I don't put all my, again, I believe I walk with God when I be my best self and I share that with others. And then a statement that I'd heard when I was young, trying to figure out, put perspective about the world around me and my desires, my wants, my confusion, my fears, that there was a line that said, if you see, life is sorrowful. Life is sorrowful. And the goal, the trick, the challenge, if you want to call it, is to try to find the beauty between the sorrows. And in my eyes, I've always walked to believe that I'm looking for that every day in our conversations like we're having now, a pleasant conversation and just speaking our truth where we're at. But if I can't find that joy right there or see it nearby, I try to create some. And I've been creating it through these podcasts. I've done it for years with my paintings, and now with my poetry, and now with my songwriting, which I'm very excited about, which you mentioned the truth, Madge. The word truth comes in almost every single one of my songs somewhere. It's either the main line chorus or it is in there mentioned, because everybody's seeking a truth, and it's a kind of an individual journey that we have to realize. I mean, I'm going to finish up by saying this. I believe that everybody is on their own unique path, experiencing sorrows and challenges and celebrations and joy, and hopefully living life to the fullest of their potential. In that, just realize your neighbor's doing the same thing. Your next door, everybody that you come up to, they're in the same state. Can we make that awareness to say, listen, let's just be mutual understanding, and we try our best, Yeah. But how, as a guide through the Delta, Billy, like what kind of moments have you witnessed before, where visitors suddenly feel like, like, wow, this is something else, or like the place beyond just hearing about it?
Well, we've given, I think, over 1,025 tours since 2015. I think probably around 2,700 folks. They just began organically. I was managing a bed and breakfast. We owned 2 bed and breakfasts, but I was managed one for almost 9 years, the oldest home in Clarksdale. And I would just connect with tourists from all over the world, and our tourism has always been pretty much blues-centric. But we started seeing years ago more people wanted to understand why was the blues were born here. And I would connect with people who, would want to know, well, what do y'all do? And, I'm like, well, we ride around in the country and we look at things and we talk. But, I think in our area, so many people live such fast-paced lifestyles. Like I always begin my tours with, there are no metaphysical certitudes in the Mississippi Delta. Everything is subjective, including time. And if you apply logic, you're behind the curve to begin with. So once that makes sense, everything makes sense, which means nothing makes sense. So it kind of sets the pace. But also I explain to people why blues music and so much country music. 3 famous rappers are from Clarksdale. Mississippi has under 3 million people, and we've got more Grammy winners than the next 5 states combined, regardless of population. We've got artists, we've got writers, Faulkner, Eudora Welty, John Grisham, just a score of them. And I think so much of that creative media is tied to kind of the French provincial understanding of terroir, all the things that go into making the grape. And I think so much of it is the fact we live in a bucolic pastoral area. We're not overstimulated, and we've got time and inclination to use our creative gifts. We offer a lot of slowdown. And if you think, Greg, today in life, whether vocationally or educationally or in our domestic lives, there's not a lot of time or inclination put on reflection, and we offer a lot of reflection time. And without reflection, it's difficult to get better at what you do. So I think people really tap into that. And when we ride around, I refer to it as a regional identity tour. It's not just about blues music, but it's more about all the elements that went into that. It's a marbling together of discrete cultures that are often misunderstood, the pace of life, the commonality of faith, and like I mentioned earlier, the bat crap crazy that makes for good media. But you roll all that together and you get this place that James Cobb called the most southern place on earth. But I think people find it fascinating. And in this place called the Delta, and even the Delta is a bit of a paradox. Why would we call it the Delta 300 miles from the mouth of the Mississippi River? And if you think about the word Delta in Greek, it means change. If you think about Delta in English, it's where one body of water disperses in the lowlands. With this northwest section of Mississippi, Mississippi has 82 counties, and the Delta comprises about 18 full and partial counties, about 200 miles long, about 65 miles wide. But in this area, the reason it's called the Delta is it's all alluvial. So it used to flood every year before the levee systems came into being to try to control the Mississippi River that's 2,340 miles long. So our whole section used to often get inundated with new sand, soil, and silt. And 41% of all the water in the United States comes down the Mississippi River. 31 states and 2 Canadian provinces dump all or part of their water into the Mississippi watershed. Everything east of the Rockies in the west to west of the Alleghenies in the east, from the tip of Idaho to the tip of Buffalo, New York, comes down the pipeline. So really, it's like John Rusky, a guy that's got a canoe company in our area. He'd be a great guy to interview. But he says, the river connects us all. Well, we've got the soil from all over the nation. So yeah. I think there is a physical, metaphysical connection with so much of the rest of the world here. But I think so many Europeans appreciate the blues music. They understand the roots of it even often better than we do. There's an old proverb that I love that I quote on every tour. Sorry, I'm getting so loquacious, but I got on my soapbox. But it's, a prophet is often not recognized in his own hometown. And often we don't see things that are right under our nose while the rest of the world looking from the outside in can. And one of the biggest blessings in our area, it's so easy in a small area or a small town to get provincial or myopic, but to have the whole world coming in and us have to look at ourselves through their eyes helps us not be as rigid or myopic as we could be. But most folks that come here just find the area fascinating, and they find the marbling together of the agricultural history, the river, again, the pace of life, and how blacks and whites break so much bread here than they do in most places in the world, even though that's not understood. And so it's just all of that rolls together while I think people on tours and people who don't take tours who come to our area just find it absolutely fascinating.
But they wouldn't know or think about any of this if they didn't spend this time with Billy. And when they when they ride around in a car, in a Jeep with him,
Yeah.
and I mean, you hear him, you hear how he thinks and how he communicates. He's a great communicator. It is such a gift and such a blessing to them. All you have to do is go to TripAdvisor and read his reviews. There are people that leave reviews there that have never left a review in their life because
Yeah.
they're so moved by the experience. And so we are so grateful and thankful for these people that cross our paths, that cross Billy's path, because he gets a chance. It's like a rolling fellowship. It's a fellowship on wheels. And he gets to connect with these people in a real personal way. And they get to understand a part of the world that they maybe had a misconception about. It just opens their eyes and they're able to slow down. There are places on his tour, he'll stop, they get out, and they literally don't say anything. They just listen. And just like you commented on the birds here, we can do that here. We don't have the city, and all the noises of a city, and it's important to recognize the
Well,
grace around us.
But I always do articulate early that it is just one man's thread on the Delta. They still have to filter what I say through Dutch cheesecloth, but hopefully it gives them a holistic look on an area that already fascinates them for whatever reason.
Yep.
well, I just have to say to the last you guys' last comments, amen, amen, amen. Everything is amazing. I mean, obviously faith appears throughout your work. And I mean, not always as certainty, but maybe as wrestling. What have you learned about your faith through your struggle, Billy? Because you mentioned addiction. What have you learned about your
Well, I
faith
tell you, the
through that
biggest thing I
struggle?
learned, and everybody's got their own walk in recovery or, I grew up in a drinking culture. That's what we say. I mean, we're not scared of a libation in the Deep South, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I let it get sideways. And, but, even with a theology degree, I felt like I thought right, but what recovery taught me was how to put feet to my faith. And some people go to recovery or treatment, some don't, some go to meetings, some love 12-step programs, some think it's antithetical to their belief system, whatever. But the biggest thing that I learned about my faith when I had to recognize that I had addiction issues and I needed help. Number one, I finally admitted I needed help. And that was a big deal. And Madge was there and stuck with me. Not everybody's spouse sticks with them. She did. But I just learned basically that how easily it was as me, an addict, to always find fault or to blame my situation on somebody else. And
Right.
recovery taught me how to put feet to my faith. But more importantly, it taught me to accept responsibility for my actions. Even if I don't like how somebody else treats me or acts, what is my part in it? And even if I don't like their behavior, I'm responsible for my behavior. But I never really even saw that until I fell and hit rock bottom. So rock bottom was the biggest salvation in my life. And the other biggest thing I learned, Greg, was the danger of resentments. And there's nothing more dangerous, in my opinion, to the addict or to somebody like me who is inherently selfish than a resentment. And even a justified resentment is dangerous because it sends us down into a rabbit hole that just it grows legs and roots, and before you know it, it's hard to be is what I like from your literature is you place a lot of importance on gratitude, and that's what Madge has been teaching me over the years. We've got so much. We've got, even living in a small trailer park in a house, we've got the health and wealth more than 99% of the population. And it's incumbent upon us to steadily be grateful. And I do struggle with that because I'm a small minded, sinful cat. But that gratefulness, the importance of releasing resentments, and the importance of living out the faith that I intellectually believe that requires something of me. And I was reading, I've been reading Russian authors for some reason this year, but I was reading a book the other day, and it was one of the Russians in the book was talking about if patience was easy, it wouldn't be a virtue. And that is so true. So, all these things I struggle with, I'm thankful I've got a mate that walks along with me, is compassionate with me when I go to extremes, which is I tend to. But that was a long answer. But basically, to answer your question, my faith has grown more since I've realized how little control I have over my life and that I need God's help to be present. And I try too often to be present myself, and that doesn't work as well. So I need help. I need the help of God, and I need the help of others. And I don't like needing help. I like to think I'm the great Pooh Bah, the great Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the
And
curtain.
behind the curtain.
That's
Well, I will tell you that I have to do a shout out to my father. So, through my own introspection and like I'm producing, the poetry book that I produced over, I think about nearly 50 or 60 songs that I wrote when I was 30 years ago, when I was like 30 and 31 years old. And, they stand the test of time in terms of just relevance.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm producing them into music, into songs. And I'm writing currently now. So my point is that my father, he had 4 kids, and he was ultimately a writer and a very creative spirit, insightful. And, you remind me a lot about him, Billy, and both you, Madge, because, you're seeking and curiosity. And, my statement's always, what if? And my father, the story of like being Rose Redmond Catholic.
Just leave it there. It's not a big deal, man.
Okay, keep going.
He ended up when we grew up, he wouldn't necessarily want to go to church every Sunday. And when I got older, I was like, Mom, why, Dad does not come to church? And I asked my father at one point. He goes, well, I went to church every single day when I was in school, and Sunday, 7 days a week. And it gave him a foundation. And something it made him understand is that you don't have to be in church to be with God. In that he didn't necessarily rise above you somewhere to some distant space where you can't find him or grasp him or see him. He's there in your heart. He ascended down into your hearts. We walk in his footsteps. Are you carrying the torch of love and acceptance and patience and compassion? And are you identifying with the God-like energies in you? So the painting behind me, dedicated to my father and my mother, from that framework, we all need a foundation, don't we? And you can travel a path of spiritual enlightenment and, is there one true God? I think we also true believe. The number of prophets, as you mentioned, Billy, they're numerous, and they come in all kinds of forms that can shed a light on really, right, directing it back into you and spotlighting each of our journeys that you are special. You have something to contribute. You are this being. Just think of the odds of you, even of us being created, being born, and being existing on this planet are astronomical. And now, what are you going to do with that? Because by chance, our loving parents, right, produce our souls right now, which we are walking the light. And I'm a big believer that, going back to, if I can't find the joy, I'm going to try to be a part of it, because I surely appreciate it. And I'm attracted to more of that than to the suffering. Am I acknowledging the suffering? Yes. And right now, our young men are having a very hard go. And you mentor, the podcast is about mentorship, importance of helping guide these young souls, both coaches, fathers, men that are outside the family dynamic, older men that can show, right, and spearhead. And you are literally mentoring every single person from around the world in a way that's commenting that probably could change their life's path forever. So bravo.
I think the book in general, Wrestling with Wisdom at the Crossroads, is really hitting home with youth. Who's the fellow up in Seattle that reached out to you? He's a young person, and what did he say?
Wonderful.
Exactly? I can't remember exactly, but very encouraged.
Yeah,
very encouraging.
We're encouraged by that young people are. It's.
I think
hitting.
you two. I think you two are making tidal waves of change unknowingly. But because we know, like for myself, I don't know what you call this, I don't know when to be expected to tell somebody to tell me. Nobody has to tell me. There doesn't have to be there doesn't have to be 1 million people to tell me what I'm doing is not positive, authentic, beautiful, meaningful, part of my purpose.
Right.
I'm not waiting. I'm doing these. This is a podcast of sharing out of. It's a passion project, and it is a platform for me to say, "Wow, I've realized what the potential is of my life, and I love to come discover people as you who have found your potential, have that purpose, and are living and creating. You're rolling through and spreading these godlike energies that we all need, especially our young men and our young people, in this time of we're going so fast we can't see what's happening. And can you just imagine these kids we have a perspective. What we're seeing here, this is why I walked away from advertising. It's just a manipulation of we're in the greatest country in the world. Everybody talks about freedom, but we have to remember that word that is the evil distraction of capitalism. We're the empire of capitalism. And there are, right, as you mentioned in college football, when the money comes, there's so much more evil transpired than having so much power and wealth that you do have no understanding of what that means, how it relates to the common good of man, and how you use it. So we hear that more times than not. Somebody getting, right? They say money doesn't change people. It shows you who they are. At any given moment, you have that money. But anyway, I will go back to your book. Tell me, Billy and Madge, your comments about what truly said. Was there a moment like, wow, we need to author this book, and this is this was going to be the goal of it? What was that experience like?
I think we both need to kind of address that. Well, number one, you mentioned ADHD, and I mean, I wasn't ever on ADHD medication. I just self-medicated over a lot of years to try to feel normal. But it's a miracle I even kept 2,700 aphorisms, and for every one I wrote, I probably let 3 slip through my alcohol-addled brain. But it's just a miracle I even kept them. But we didn't really know what to do with them. And even the poems, I mean, I had no clue. If you'd asked me how many aphorisms, I'd have said, well, we got a few hundred, and we had over 2,700. How many poems? I'd say, oh, probably 10 or 15. We had 77. We culled it down. But all of that to say, we didn't really know what to do with it. And I'm going to let Madge address the Proverbs 8 moment in a minute. But a couple of people that were catalysts were, one, I was given a tour, and the lady just is like, somehow it came up that we were writing a book, and she's like, well, you got to do something with it. And she just kept at it. And I'm like, well, maybe we ought to. But talk to about the Proverbs 8 and about kind of the book, how it came about. Because I can tell you, Greg, I'm just the rough idea guy. I'm the Sherpa, and she makes everything work. Otherwise, it'd never come to fruition in any form or fashion. And we just were hooked up with serendipitously, or what we would call providentially, with a fairly local publisher that really made it all work. So,
Yeah, but prior to that, when we knew we wanted to do something with them, we just didn't know what to do. We went and saw a friend of ours who is Neil White, who has, what's the name of his?
Nautilus
Nautilus
Publishing.
Publishing. He publishes lots of people, and we just sat down. We had a Zoom call with him and asking him what are next steps. We've got this idea that we want to do a book. What do we do? And he gave us some good feedback. And he talked about how, everything's going the way of Amazon. He said, I even use them to print my books. I mean, it's
Right.
you need to look into that. So we took all that information and let it, stew in us, and we still didn't know what to do. But every morning, Billy and I, when COVID hit and churches closed their door and everything became so strange, we started reading the Bible out loud together every day, and having a little morning devotional. And in our devotional, we'd always read a psalm. We'd always read a proverb that corresponded with the day of the month. So
31 chapters, 31 days.
Right. And then we read from beginning to end the Bible. Then we started back over, and now we're kind of just in the New Testament, and we just read wherever we are, and then we read some other authors. But on the 8th of day, or some month, not too long ago, we were reading the 8th proverb. And it says, it talked about wisdom. You explain it better, Billy. You do.
Well, it just talks about wisdom was on the hilltop at the crossroads, crying out, and understanding was there. And it just was talking about wisdom wrestling at the crossroads. And there was such a correlation in the old covenant with Jacob, one of the patriarchs, wrestling with God all night till God blessed him. But since we are known as the epicenter of the Faustian myth of the crossroads of Robert Johnson, the most famous bluesman, quote, selling his soul to the devil at the crossroads for his incredible guitar skills. Back to duality and paradox, we are also somewhat known as many places are in the Deep South, as the buckle of the Bible Belt. So you've got that duality right there. And people come from all over the world. They know that the crossroads is where Clarksdale is better than we did. I didn't even know it till I moved back, and I lived a half a mile from it. Back to not understanding, what's in your own hometown. But that just spoke to us as far as how to title this project we may one day do. Wrestling with Wisdom at the Crossroads, Aphorisms and Poems of Malachi Montroy, which is a nom de plume I write under. But that wrestling with wisdom at the crossroads, and it doesn't matter whether one is engaged in active faith or not or whatever, we all have monkeys on our back. We all have to wrestle with decisions daily, minutely, hourly, and there's always a crossroads. And crossroads just determine where do you go next in life. And so it just all seemed to start gelling around that one verse, wrestling with wisdom at the crossroads. And there is always duality at the crossroads. There's the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, with the old Animal House movie, if you remember that.
Yes.
And so we've always got voices speaking to us, whether gods or whether people believe in the devil or our own experience, determinism from a life that we've lived, and free will. And back to duality, where determinism and free will meet is at a crossroads, the same place that we have huge decisions. What do we do with our life? And while I think so much of determinism um, predisposes us to walk certain paths, I still believe God gives us choices always to choose whatever might be the right path. And even if we choose the wrong path, there's always opportunity until there isn't to figure out where the right path is. But all that to say that looking for and searching for wisdom is a very active thing. And in Proverbs, according to the scripture we read, wisdom was the first thing created by the Godhead. And wisdom was referred to as a she. And wisdom is the thing to get. And wisdom is more valuable than rubies and gold. And really, when you think about it, we can't leave here with anything other than hopefully a life well lived. And that life well lived, to get back to your point of mentorship, is where sustainability should be, that we're teaching the next generation to be better than we are without us being insecure about them being better. But all of this happens at a crossroads.
Yeah. In the
But
midst,
there has to
in the
be
midst of
something
the
that grounds
chaos.
us.
Right.
Right.
We have to
Right.
have something that there's so much wisdom in the Bible. It is profound wisdom.
There's the foundational roots of experience, in terms of from the earliest of writings known to man. It combines as we roll forward, and we have from all this early communication, in that any form of communication and messaging that has that wisdom in a foundation, just like our roots in our hometowns and our families, and those roots will when you hear the birds chirping, you realize, like, okay, these are the remains of the dinosaur era, these little flights of fancy that have somehow survived the long haul, amongst us, as we propel forward in such a high rate of speed and literally kind of outside the box of nature. The relevance of your book, your tours, that message you just mentioned of just understanding, reminding everybody that this is a question from the beginning of time. And we happen to be at this place in our time to be able to, again, share this, what we still hold on to share those deep-rooted humanity feelings and qualities that, I'm afraid to say that through our own demise, that I bet we've probably lost a generation of young people already, not even looking, being so distracted and thinking that what is technological future and our fortune, that where everybody is going, whoa, we're in a stage that's not even a moment of this, nuclear holocaust. Like, we all going to decide not to press that button? But it's getting to another level where I can only imagine what young people are experiencing. And because what they know hardly any, we're trying to bring our experience and our love and our essence of humanity. And that's my whole message of the podcast is like, whoa, think globally, act locally. And you are doing that profoundly. And I think you're having major impact on something that, when we talk about music and what brings us together in life and love and food and culture and farming and the work it takes to get that is really all that matters. Music, art, love. And that's what I believe as an essence of an artist, that creative side, right? You're writing, Billy, because of your wisdom. You put it into your own spoken words. And this is a creative force for mental health of expression. So it's not what you create, it's what you discover. And then you just put that down and put it out to the world. So that expression of mental health, as I mentioned, I'm a physiotherapist on that, my physical being. And there needs to be also in schools taught more about the responsibility of self-care. This is your body. This is your temple. We're not really nurturing. We have all these sports that all the money makers, but we're not thinking about the 98%. They're not playing sports. We're sitting back and watching and not really been trained with a coach or with some nutrition, right? Some awareness, understanding, appreciation. How do you get that food on your table? It's just been a fast-paced rush. And so again, I'll get off my little rant. And again, the name of your book is
Wrestling with Wisdom at the Crossroads, the Aphorisms and Poems of Malachi Montroy. And Montroy is an old family name on my mom's side, 7 or 8 generations into the Delta. And Malachi, I like the alliteration of Malachi Montroy, but also Malachi was the last book in the Old Testament before the 400-year interregnum to the New Testament. And it just seemed like an appropriate nom de plume to write under. And I've written under several for whatever reason. So
okay. So what lessons from your Southern identity and Delta life could help younger generations navigate this modern anxiety, division, and kind of disconnection?
Well, and again, I'm probably the worst guy to give advice. I get overstimulated real easily. Madge can tell you that. I can't handle bells and whistles, and I'm essentially an introvert who operates as an extrovert when I'm on. But even after this interview, I'll probably go to ground and need to get on the water and go paddle just to try to get back to normal. And that's not that's a weakness of mine. That's a character defect or whatever we want to call it. But it is just, every day I'm like, why am I picking up this phone? Why am I doing this? But we are addicted to the immediacy of communication without any deep-seated connection via communication. And, I just operate best. And again, it's a lot of this is my own character defects, but I operate best face to face. This is very comfortable for me because I can see you and I can connect with you. But, telephones ringing, text blowing me up, it all overstimulates me. And if I'm going to connect with somebody, I don't do small talk real well. And I was reading yesterday that de Tocqueville, the French philosopher and writer, when he wrote his book on democracy in America back in, I think, middle 1800s, he had made 2 observations that Americans were the least interested of philosophy than any nation in the world, and we relied on our creature comforts. And I'm very similar to the same way. I look to my personal peace and try to keep everything at bay so I'm at peace, but I don't know that He wants us to live a peaceful lifestyle, I think. And I think as much of a simple lifestyle as we can is conducive to pleasing God and our fellow man and ourself. But at the same time, I think so often in our first world culture, we don't really think about thinking, or we don't think deeply. And if we used to, we rarely do anymore because we get 1,000 hits a day from every ad, every TikTok video, every YouTube video. And even though there's many things that can come positive out of the immediacy of asking chat or whatever those things are called about an immediate answer, that's great. But we also are not deepening, connecting, and lengthening our synapses that help us to think better when we're allowing somebody else to do our thinking for us. And when somebody else is doing our thinking for us, we're not very present to think about what truth may be. We are being inculcated subtly with somebody else's truth. So all of that is just a big mess, but I would just say do the best damn thing you can at trying to keep as simple of a lifestyle as possible.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
What is the proverb that talks that says, have not too much and not too little?
I think it says, Lord, give me enough that I don't rob my neighbor and dishonor you, but don't give me too much that I disown you and don't recognize you. So if I have to pick one extreme over the other, which I'm apt to do, I think it's better to be poor, to try not to rob, and if we do, to make amends, than to disown God and the one absolute, I think, in the world, because then we're going to really be a hot mess.
Right.
But basically, keep it in, like Madge says, keep it in the middle somewhere. Give me enough to where I'm thankful, but not so much that I no longer appreciate. I was just reading, I think, in this book I was reading, it was talking about some of Pushkin's poems and literature, and it was just talking about, we want too much. We want too much, and we think more will make us happy, and more just means we need more. And it's like I wrote a poem that's so true, and it's what we say in recovery. I have a disease of more. I want more of everything. And that doesn't fill any vessel that has the ability to constantly expand with more.
Well said. In that vehicle of the vehicle that we're rocking in, and to be stable, what brings stability is that gratitude. Yes. And I will swing back to what you said, Billy, that having to paddle on the river after an engaging share of you is not a defect. It is your unique quality of your being, which is unique. And that's why you think, because the world around us is not like, could be considered like, what is normal? I don't know what that even the word means, right? It means, your quality, Madge is going to let you get on that water as much as you want. And please keep doing that, because what you bring as your spirit, right, evolves, you need that, it's not a defect. I think it is, I truly believe it is your unique qualities as an individual, and with the universe bringing you and Madge together, you're shining. You guys' light have never been so bright. So I really want to thank you so much for spending time here on the podcast. It's been a delight.
Can I say one more thing?
Yep.
I want to kind of end on this, because what we're talking about is pretty universal, and about these young people and mentoring. If you think about it, Greg, there's nothing else on this earth like us. Nothing.
Exactly. Right.
We have empathy. We experience guilt. We are aliens here. This is not, it's how we live here is important. How we treat others while we're here is important. But this is not what it's all about. It's not all about this. This is temporary.
Well, C.S. Lewis, I think, said it best, in my opinion.
Or G.K.
No, well, what I was going to say next was, he said, we are a soul with a body, not a body with a soul. And that lends some perspective to what we focus on, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys, please keep on shining on. And it's just been a true pleasure to have you today. We'll do some exchanges. We'll keep in touch appropriately. And so thank you again so much, you guys, for your contribution. It's been a warm embrace of exchange, and I appreciate you. So have a great day.
We appreciate you. Bless you, Greg.
All right.
Thanks, Greg.
All the best. God bless. Take care.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Till next time. Bye-bye.